Divrei Torah. I think a lot this time of year about names, Hebrew names specifically. At a synagogue that I frequently attended in New York City, all of those who had converted to Judaism in the previous year would come together for an aliyah to the Torah on this Shabbat, the Shabbat before Shavuot. Shavuot, of course, is the holiday which you read about, the most famous Jew by choice in Megillat Ruth, in the book of Ruth. So what happened is that each of these newly minted Jews would be called up to the bima by their names that they had chosen at the conclusion of the conversion process, and names that represented, in a sense, the new soul that had been birthed in them as they came out of the mikvah as Jews for the first time. Hearing each of those names, several of which I had a chance to help choose with these new converts, was a powerful experience. It's kind of the same feeling that I have every time I officiate at a bris or a simchat bat, when I call out the Hebrew name of a child for the first time in public. What makes these naming moments so special is not just what the name says about the person who chose it or for whom it was chosen, but what being granted this name allows every single Jew to do, to be seen and to be heard by the entire community on sacred occasions most especially, and also to be seen and to be heard by God. I often remind people at these moments of naming that though as Americans we use our English name more frequently, it is our Hebrew name that is used when a child becomes bar or bat mitzvah or inked into a ketubah. It is our Hebrew name that we use when we pray for someone's healing or when we memorialize them with El Maleh Rachamim. When we want to call out to each other, we use our English names. But when we call out to God, or when someone wants to call out to God on our behalf, our Hebrew name is used. The name is a portal. It unlocks the connection between the human and the divine. It focuses God's gaze from the billions of people on the planet to the one individual whose particular circumstances require or demand God's attention at that particular moment. And it's that narrowing of focus that I consider to be the most powerful aspect of naming rituals. Usually our focus and God's focus is quite broad. We're concerned for ourselves, but also for our families and for our friends. And for sure, now more than ever, we are keenly aware of how interconnected we are, of the large number of people whose behavior can have a significant effect on our lives and on our well-being. And that is precisely what it is that we are reminded of at the beginning of Parshat Bamidbar. So please, I invite you to follow along with me as I chant the opening verses of the Parsha on page 769. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe b'midbar Sinai be'ohel moed be'echad lachodesh hasheni b'shana hashenit litzeta me'eretz Mitzrayim lemor Se'u et rosh kol adat b'nei Israel lemishpechotam leveit abotam b'mispar shemot kol zachar legugelotam mi ben esrim shana v'mala kol yotzet tzava b'Yisrael tifkedu otam letziv otam ata beharon v'itchem yihyu ish lemateh Ish Rosh Leveit Avotav Hu. Take a census of the whole Israelite community by the clans of its ancestral homes. What follows is a counting, a tribe-by-tribe counting of the entire population of the Israelites. And it's a curiously dry beginning to a book that, despite the fact that it takes place in the desert, is pretty much as far from dry as possible. Some of the most juicy and scandalous stories in the Torah are found in its pages. So why does Parshat Bamidbar begin with a census, with a wide gaze, a broad view of all of the Israelites? The biblical commentator Rashi offers a suggestion. Because the people of Israel are dear to God, God counts them often. God counted them when they were about to leave Egypt. He counted them after the golden calf to establish how many were left. And now that he was about to cause his presence to dwell among them, at the forthcoming dedication of the tabernacle, he counted them again. The image Rashi uses here of God counting us with love is a comforting and inspiring one. But hidden within the explanation is something quite dark, even sinister. What do each of these occasions have in common? The Exodus, the incident of the golden calf, and even the inauguration of the tabernacle in the wilderness. Danger. In each of these cases, there was some element of either human or divine danger that threatened to wipe out large numbers of the Israelite population. Vengeful Egyptians, a devastating punishment from God, even the arrival of the cloud of glory within the camp was dangerous, for any mistake in the performance of the rituals of the tabernacle could bring disastrous consequences. In other words, though counting is an act of divine love, it is also quite frequently made necessary because of fear. The fear of mortality, of injury and illness. The fear that the next time we count, our numbers might be smaller than they were the time before. Numbers, as the book we begin today is often translated into English, can be scary. They can be overwhelming. And yet, without an accurate count of how many we are or how many we were, we can't really make good decisions for the betterment of our society. The parallel with this current moment is quite obvious and quite palpable. We have been, I would suggest, fixated, obsessed with numbers over these past 3 months. We've counted number of cases, numbers of deaths, but we've also been using those numbers to make predictions about the future, crunching data to access whether the trends are going up or down, and analyzing whether a particular strategy of fighting the pandemic is working or not. And every time we look at those numbers, what do we feel? We experience a wave of emotion, sadness, helplessness, and fear. When we pray that health officials, local and state and federal government agencies, schools and workplaces will make the best use of these numbers to keep us all safe. But if in thinking about the lives that we have lost and the lives that are at stake, we are only concerned about the numbers, I worry that no matter how hard we try to remain analytical and objective, we won't have all that we need to make the best decisions about how to move forward. Numbers are supposed to be objective, but as our count increases by the day, our reaction to these numbers is anything but. Ramban Nachmanides, however, offers a different interpretation than Rashi, however, of what these numbers at the start of Bamidbar mean to God and should mean to us. There are two kinds of counting, he explains, each with a different purpose. The first type, the purpose is simply to gain knowledge of the total number of an item. For example, one counts his money because he wishes to know how much he has. It is the total that interests him. The individual coins and bills have no intrinsic significance. The second type of counting has a different objective. The ultimate goal is to appreciate and to recognize each individual and is not necessarily concerned with the total number. Ramban writes that each person would pass before Moses and Aaron. They counted the people by going from house to house, in the process, learning about each person, about each family, and how they lived. And indeed, if you look at the text of the Torah, it's this second kind of counting that is evoked so clearly from its words. How is the census to be taken? Bimispar Shemot, by counting the names. Each person is named. Each soul identified individually, their particular value to the community and to God acknowledged before all. When I think of the census conducted in this parsha, I see a scene quite like the one I witnessed every year before Shavuot. Every member of the Israelite family called out by name so that the story of their lives and of the content of their soul is not diminished by the overwhelming nature of the numbers that represent the final count. And though this task indeed seems one that only God could possibly undertake, to know the names behind all of the numbers that keep adding up around us, we should take comfort in the fact that unlike God, we are not responsible for every single person on this planet. We don't have to know everyone by name. We can start with the names in our own community, as we do each time we read the Mishaberach list. We can then extend our gaze outward to our neighbors and our fellow Dalasites. We can read their stories in the newspaper, familiarize ourselves with the faces and the histories behind the numbers. Why is this so important? Because as Jews, we understand perhaps better than any other people on earth the danger of turning names only into numbers. The villains of our history, those who were so overwhelmed by our numbers that they ceased to see us as people at all, are just that, history. But we have an opportunity as we begin Sefer B'Midbar, the book of Numbers, together. So let us remind ourselves and others that the best way to secure the future is to count as our ancestors did, to focus our attention, our compassion, and our care on as many names as we possibly can. In that spirit, now we'll